I'm Liza Holland. I'm a member of the Nonpartisan League of Women Voters here in Lexington, and I will be serving as moderator for this forum for the first round of candidates for the LFUCG City Council at large positions. The League of Women Voters is the sponsor for this event, and the forums will be available later by going onto the League website, which is lwvlexington.com, and click under candidate forums. We have 4 candidates for this election in this forum. We welcome to all of you. In order to give the candidates a fair chance to be heard, we have randomly drawn via random.org for the order of opening remarks and questions, and a second time for the order of closing remarks. We are following the League of Women Voters policies and procedures for this forum, and each candidate will have 60 seconds to introduce themselves and 60 seconds to respond to questions. Questions have been created by members of the League, and we have taken many questions from the public. Finally, we will give each candidate 60 seconds for closing remarks, and we will use the second drawing for the order of those closing comments. At this point, we will begin with opening comments. And Mr. Moloney, you are first. 60 seconds to introduce.
Thank you. Thank you all, the League women, for bringing it, letting people know who's running, because we haven't had it formed yet. So I appreciate you all doing this. I'm Richard Moloney. I've been a 7-term councilman for the 11th district. I've been a council member at large the last 2 terms. And also before that, I was in affordable housing for 20 years. And I was the president of Breach when I left. Then I went to work for the governor as Commissioner of Housing, Building, Construction. And I came back to the city to be the Chief Administrative Officer for the whole city. And then I became Public Work Commissioner. And then I ran for council at large. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Farmer.
Thank you. I wanted to thank my fellow candidates for being here, but wanted to thank the League for your continuing great work, and certainly the historical work that you did to help us form our current government. We might not be sitting here having a conversation if y'all hadn't helped us merge our government, so thank you. My name is Bill Farmer. I'm a native of Lexington. My family has a business here in Lexington. I've served on the City Council for 20 years, over 2 different 10-year stints as a 5th District Council member. This is my endeavor to cover countywide, to take the work that I did in the 5th District on behalf of folks and do it on behalf of everyone, from every corner of the county to every other corner of the county. And for the first time, really have the ability to say, everybody gets a chance to vote for Bill Farmer now, which is kind of fun. So appreciate the time here today and talking about the issues before us all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Ellinger.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Holland. Thank you to the League of Women Voters. Like my other candidates, I just want to thank them for participating. I want to thank the audience that is going to be listening to this, and it's a great opportunity to learn about the candidates that are running. I am Chuck Ellinger. I'm a 4-term council member at large. I provide leadership and experience that will ensure a strong Lexington. I believe in basic services to all Fayette County residents, including exceptional police and fire departments, improved stormwater and sanitary sewers, and roads. So my top 3 priorities are public safety, economic development, jobs, and affordable housing. I look forward to answering your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Farr.
Oh, thank you, everyone. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for having us. I want to say thanks to my co-runners. I look forward to having a conversation with you. Let me introduce myself by asking and answering 3 questions. First is, who am I? Why am I running? And what do I hope to accomplish? Well, I'm the grandson of sharecroppers and the son of working class parents. I've always been sensitive to the needs of working class people. I've spent my entire adult life fighting for social justice for the least of these, and fighting against poverty, racism, homophobia, and sexism. And I've committed myself to the struggle for justice and making sure that all voices are heard. Why am I running? Well, I'm running because all of the work I've been doing regarding working class people, regarding social justice, I want to now do from within the walls of city government to make sure all voices are heard. And what do I hope to accomplish? Well, Lexington is growing at a rapid rate, and I want to make sure that as we continue to grow, that our citizens will have the resources they need for self-development. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Farmer, you will take this question first.
Yes, ma'am.
What do you see as the single most important issue facing facing Lexington? And what is your plan to address this issue?
Well, I think if you talk to folks and follow newspaper and commentary, any of the social media outlets, I think there's a thirst for people. They want safety. They want safe streets to walk on. They want safe roads to drive on. They want safe neighborhoods to live in. And some or all of those can be taken care of with any of the different divisions and departments. But I think that our uniformed services deserve to have, respect added back to the work that they do, and for us to help them do that work, because giving those folks the tools that they need and investment of our emotions on their behalf to help them keep Lexington safe is the number one thing. So some of that's outreach personally on behalf of the individuals in the council, and some of that is systemic in terms of changing who we are and what we do to make it more effective. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ellinger.
Thank you. As I said in my opening, my top priority is going to be public safety. If you don't feel safe in your house, you don't feel safe in the street, then we as a city aren't doing our job. 56% of our budget actually goes towards public safety, because that is, in my opinion, the most important thing that we do. Unfortunately, we've had an issue with keeping our police at the authorized strength that we need to. We just signed a collective bargaining agreement. We're over 100 officers down right now. So we hopefully, by having this new collective bargaining agreement, we'll be able to retain our police officers and not lose them to other areas, and that we'll be able to get new police officers. We did put something, I think that's important. We put in more neighborhood resource officers. And I think that that's one area we need to really work on, because that way you work with the community and they have trust with the officers. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Farr.
Yes, I think our greatest problem, there are many of them, but particularly poverty and lack of resources. I made this point in 2018 when I ran before, that we talk a lot about crime and high crime rate. We talk a lot about drug abuse, but very little about poverty. And I think those three problems are intertwined. And I think we have to put forth some effort to understand how they intersect. And that will then lead to, I think, an improvement in safety. There are people who are uptight because they have a lack of resources and they're struggling, and their struggle, I think, for the most part, is in some ways ignored. And I think if we turn our focus to these people who are at the margins struggling, then some of these other problems like the drug abuse and crime rate will in some ways take care of themselves.
Thank you. Mr. Moloney.
Thank you. There's a lot of priorities. The biggest problem I think right now is housing and homelessness. And the biggest help so far during this pandemic has been our police and fire. They've been tremendous, and they've been short help, but we need to continue to help them. And I've worked with a couple nonprofits that we're working with right now to bring an idea to help some of the homeless. We have a piece of property at 145 units that we can put up. As you know, that 456 people have been evicted this year, in the last few months. They need a place. So we're going to try to put those 145 people in those units. And I have all these nonprofits that are working, that we're going to be able to transition them out in 3 months, be mentors to get them in the housing, in the jobs. And to me, those are the most important things we're going through in the last 2-3 years, that I think right now is the biggest crisis we have. But we have a lot of great priorities, but to me, the biggest crisis right now is housing for the homelessness. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The introductions definitely hear that you are in tune with what voters are asking, because we have several of these topics with further questions on our list here today. So Mr. Ellinger, you will be first for this next question. Lexington faces challenges across all of their districts with regards to housing affordability, diversity, and accessibility. What do you see as the city's role in addressing affordable housing, and how would you recommend prioritizing policy change to address these challenges?
Well, in 2014, I was on the council when we instituted the trust fund, the housing, affordable housing trust fund. Since then, we've put in $23.6 million when we've been able to leverage $352 million. We have added in the most recent ARPA money, another 10 million and another 3 million from general fund. We also reinstituted a new office with our housing advocacy and community development with our new commissioner, Charlie Lantern. So I think we have really understood that we need to do something about affordable housing. As I said earlier, that is one of my top 3 priorities, and we'll continue to work hard with that one. One of the issues that we had during the pandemic was housing stabilization. We worked hard in that, and we have been able to put in, with the help of the state, we just received another grant for 11.7 million for 40 million to keep people in their homes. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Farr.
Yes, I'm in agreement with Mr. Moloney and Ellinger in terms of the importance of housing and homelessness. I think we really have to take 2 things here. One is, in some ways, I want to challenge the term affordable housing. And I do this because I've heard this from the citizens of Lexington. They have asked the question, well, who determines what's affordable? Because they found that what is called affordable housing, some of them still can't afford. So I think we need to rethink what we're calling affordable housing. The 10 million that's used, that was designated for housing out of the 120 million that the federal government gave us for COVID relief, I think that number should be larger. And the third thing is, it's projected that Lexington is growing at such a rapid rate that our population will increase by 40,000 people in the year 2025. And I think we need to sort of jump ahead of that and sort of do some research and figure out when these people come into the city, where they're living, where they're finding housing, and establish something that will help them find their housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Moloney.
Thank you. I've already hit on that with the idea that I'm working with the nonprofit to try to get those 145 units and keep that transition coming. The problem is when they come out. And as you know, right now we got 4,000 realtors in Lexington, and we only got about 150 homes for sale. There is a problem there. And I had the blessing when we expanded the boundaries back in the 1990s. I worked for affordable housing with Reach. We were able, when people started moving out of the houses in, like, for instance, Cardinal Valley, Garden Side, and places like that, they got their second home. Their home came available and was affordable for low-income families. They had a dream to start their own home. We don't have that anymore. And the only way to do that is probably look at this interstate and look where the hospitals being built, like, for instance, Central Baptist and University of Kentucky, learn from my mistakes on Nichols Road and start looking and planning around the interstate. And to me, that will bring affordable housing and opportunities down the road. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Farmer.
You know, the other candidates have given voice to several parts of this, and we need to think about this holistically. And I think there's another part to it where, you know, affordable housing comes home to you when your children can't afford to live here. I think that is something that changes the way you look at the entirety of Lexington. So there's affordable housing things that have to do with folks of every strata. And certainly the council and the administration continue to find ways to add money to the situation. I think that those are all great outreach efforts, but we need folks to solve problems. And this idea that Councilmember Moloney is talking about brings groups together across different areas to solve on behalf of all. And this is that kind of problem for Lexington, because affordable housing and homelessness go together in a lot of people's minds, and they want us to help them on both ends of that. I believe we can do so.
Thank you. Mr. Farr, you will take this question first. Poverty is one of the biggest issues that affect poor families' education and employment opportunities. What plans and steps do you see as very important to implement and promote effective poverty elimination programs? And what are you willing to do to ensure that the implementation is a priority?
I think we need something like an office on poverty or a commission on poverty. And I've done some research, and there's several cities in the country that have those kind of offices in place. And because of that, they've been able to actually make a difference. They can show numerically that poverty has decreased in those cities. And I have a list of several of them. And part of what I would like to do is, City Council has a travel budget, and I think 45,000 has just been added to that budget. And I think a lot of that travel budget should be used to visit these cities, to visit their mayor, their city council, and learn from them and find out what exactly they've been doing and bring that knowledge back to Lexington. But we need an office that's responsible for that kind of work. And that's what I would try to develop.
Thank you. Mr. Moloney.
Thank you. We got to look where poverty comes from. And in my opinion, it comes from drug problems, opioids. And I want to thank my colleague, Councilmember Farmer, who served with me a few years ago. I brought a proposal together to the council with lawyers to sue the opioid company. And Mr. Farmer, you didn't know, we won. We're now getting a lot of money coming in here for the next 20 years. We need to take that money, get to help the people prevent from poverty and keep getting back on drugs. And then to me, jobs is going to be the other main thing to get these, but once they come off, they got to have a job. And as you all know, I was a big Marriage Training Center fan. When we got rid of the Marriage Training Center, that community went way down. And when you have things where people can go get jobs, we need to go back to that. And that's when I'm pushing for it. And I appreciate that. Thank you.
Mr. Farmer.
Yeah, the great points, excellent points. Part of one of the things that also worked was during the Gray administration was, in essence, kind of what gets measured gets done. If you know what that population is, especially at that time looking at homelessness, you're able to do outreach to them and to help with that. With poverty, this has different kinds of things and other parts to look at, but the part about having a job and having a wage at that job that will provide you the opportunity to not be in poverty, those are the things that, is this the great example of what the Mayor's Training Center did, because, government gets refocused every 4 years or so, depending on who's at the top. And sometimes things get moved around and the focus goes away. And that's one thing that the Mayor's Training Center did. It gave a hub, a focus, a place for people to go to so you could get them kind of into that system, into that population, so you could help them and help them move forward. Because underneath that, and I agree, all manner of addiction in every kind of family life. And we have to continue to work on those, help those folks in those places get better and get out. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ellinger.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. Jobs are very important for us as a government because 80% of our income comes from the payroll and net profit. So we need everybody working it. And you have to look at the social and economic factors that go into that. And what we need to address the root causes. We need to address affordable housing. We need to address homelessness. We need to strengthen our workforce, our youth programming, our job training, and our substance disorder. So those are issues that we need to address. And I think, as it was mentioned, the Mayor's Jobs Training Center obviously is something that we need to look back and bring back.
Thank you. Mr. Moloney, you'll take this question first.
Yes, ma'am.
A little bit long in how it was presented, but charitable nonprofit businesses employ 9% of the Lexington Fayette County workforce and account for 9.6% of the annual wages. In addition to being major employers, the nonprofit sector also brings significant revenues through tourism, local dining, and retail support, and more. How would you support the nonprofit sector as an employer of choice and as an economic engine in Lexington?
Well, and I'm glad you brought that. We got the ARPA money with $120 million. I made a motion to set aside $9 million for nonprofits to help them go to the next level. Well, the council moved it down to $6 million. I got a little bit frustrated, but that's fine. That's better than nothing. But it is going to be able to take people, businesses, and nonprofits to the next level. And we got to use that money one time for like capital projects. But a lot of these nonprofits who've been working with us for many years need this capital project and never had this opportunity. And with this ARPA money coming in, we're going to be able to have them be able to get this money. And I think it's going to take it to the next level should have been done a long time ago. So I'm glad that my colleagues have supported it, but I wish we would have had 9 million. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Farmer.
So part of the premise of the question was that nonprofits bring people to restaurants and businesses. Was that the gravamen of the commentary?
Basically, it's saying that they're an employer of choice and they also bring significant revenues through tourism, local dining, and retail support.
Well, there's little doubt that nonprofits do great work in Lexington because they champion on behalf of folks, individuals, and issues that need focus, need help, and need direction. And certainly if you are common to that and helpful to it, more people come into the fold, so to speak. Now, the ability to incent those folks to do a better job or to have more depth about them is a great thing. I think though, nonprofits do great work and they do bring people to Lexington. I'm having trouble gelling up on anything other than giving them more money. I need, this question is elusive to me because I feel like they do great work. They bring people to the city. In doing so, more know about that and live here. If we continue to make the climate here, the environment here positive for folks, more will continue to come. And certainly we would want to incent all of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ellinger.
Nonprofits do a lot of things that fill in cracks that government doesn't do. We really need them out there. And that's why when we looked at the ARPA money, we put $6 million into the capital projects. We put in money because we knew that was important, that they can help the city. We also, when we did our PPP during the pandemic, we put $5 million and we also included the nonprofits in that too. I've worked with the nonprofit network and they do great work and we need to make sure that we help them out. And we do as a city, but we need them as much as they need us and they bring a lot to this community.
Thank you. Mr. Farr.
Yes, thank you. I have little to add other than what my co-runners have said. And what nonprofits are, they do a good service for the city. They meet the needs of a lot of people. And not being on city council, I'm not quite sure what kind of line of communication there is between city council and nonprofits in terms of the city council's ability to sort of address the needs of nonprofits and make sure that they continue to flourish, because if they continue to flourish, then many of our citizens flourish as well. I would have to tend to agree with Mr. Moloney in terms of moving at 6 to 9 million. Yeah, I think that would have been a bonus for them.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Mr. Farmer, you will take this question first. Climate change is a real challenge for all of us all over the world. What are your priorities for any green initiatives for Lexington?
Well, we've started some things inside the government over the last few years to help, everywhere that we can minimize our carbon footprint inside the government. Everything from, changing light fixtures to, adding solar panels to firehouses, things of that capacity. And that works really well for us. It's something that is ongoing and something that we should not stop. I think your next step is there to try to export that to the public, to the consuming public or to the business public, to help them do some of the same things too. And you wouldn't want to necessarily regulate that to begin with, but you'd want to incent it in some way. And we receive, the council receives yearly an update on the work that's been done and what difference it has made. And that could be done for other folks outside the government. If we can get a footing there, it would be great to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ellinger.
Well, today, this morning before this, I was out doing the reforest the bluegrass, and there was over 300 volunteers out there putting in little seedlings in there because they know how important this Mother Earth is, and we have to take care of it. We have to minimize our carbon footprint. As an avid cyclist, I love being out in the countryside and riding my bike, and I'd like to see more people out there make more multimodal transportations and make sure that we have mass transportation. And with Lextrand, it provides a nice service for everybody. We have to make sure as when we look at how we are protecting this city, that we have to do everything we can to minimize our carbon footprint. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Farr.
Yes, I think that a lot of our citizens, maybe they don't understand exactly how serious climate change is. And I would be behind really working harder to educate people about climate change, right? I think people need to be more educated about this problem. And I think that it's possible to put in place educational programs that will better inform our citizenry about climate change and the importance of it, and get us all thinking as a community about ways we might work together as a community to reduce our carbon footprint.
Thank you. Mr. Moloney.
Thank you. I know we have 1 minute. I think this thing could go on for years, but as a commissioner, I was able to take all our garbage truck to make them the CNG, and thank the Councilmember Farmer who supported that. A couple of grants that we were able to write to make it into cleaner air and quieter machine. The next issue is going to be important for the next 5 years is our trash. And to me, I took a group down, council members to Sevierville. They take all their trash to make it into mulch, everything. And I don't want to leave our trash 1,000 years in the ground. There's so much energy off the trash we have and so many opportunities. We have got to start thinking out of the box and be able to do it, keep our trash and be able to recycle that. And that's, as a council member, I will be pushing for the next, if I win, that'd be my top priority. And for the climate change, that we make sure our trash goes in the right place. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ellinger, you'll take this first. What are your thoughts on reducing crime in Lexington, especially violent crime?
Well, before I get there, I didn't get to make me think about, we actually, our recycling plant just was reopened. We put 4.2 million in that. And I wanted to make sure that everybody knows that they can get their paper back on the curb. Now with violence, that has actually been one, and that's why I've made public safety my top priority, because that has been an issue. As I said earlier, if you don't feel safe in the house, you don't feel safe in the street, then we as a government aren't doing our job. We have instituted a One Lexington program with our Divine Karama as our director there. And he came on last May, had a small budget. Hopefully when we get the mayor's budget on April 19th, that she's going to include more money in that, because that has been I think, a successful program, but we need to beat that up. We have to all work together. We need mentors. The pandemic has really showed us how this has become a big issue. And as I said earlier, we have to address the root causes: affordable housing, homeless, strengthen workforce, youth program, job training, substance. I see my time is up. Thank you.
Mr. Farr.
Yes, as I said before, I see the issues of violence or crime, drug abuse, and poverty is all intertwined. And again, I think that message sometimes falls on deaf ears. But I think looking at particular communities where the crime rate seems pretty high, and thinking about the needs of the people and the kind of resources that are needed in those communities, whether those resources be material resources, jobs with better income, educational resources, opening community centers for kids in the summer when they're out of school and having educational programs, those kinds of things. But I think this violent crime is not just something that falls out of thin air. There are causes for it, and part of the task is getting to the root of those causes and being honest about what those causes are, such as poverty being one. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Moloney.
Thank you. This One Lexington is doing a great job. He's doing it by himself. I think we need more effort. And I want to talk about where the problem generated. It's coming from drugs. And in one program we call the paramedicine, it just started in the police and the fire. They're going out and solving a lot of these problems. What these ongoing people have been start more crimes, they prevent them. And we've got to keep that program going strong. It's one of the best programs. So hopefully with this opioid money that we get, we're able to keep funding those programs. But it's very important that it goes back to where the jobs are. Marriage Training Center, give these kids hope. And if we don't give them hope, they have nowhere to turn but these crimes. Until the city gets give these young generations hope, we'll hope to stop some of the problems that we have.
Thank you. Mr. Farmer.
Thank you. In looking at getting back to basics around government and what government does and how we do it, and making, you know, the streets safe to walk on, the roads safe to drive on, the neighborhoods safe to live in, it requires us to redefine policing in terms of what it does and what personnel it uses. But I think most importantly in all of this, realize the fact that we are an urban county government and we cover the entire county. And we do that right now with 3 police sectors. And I just think that the way Lexington has grown, will continue to grow, we need to keep working towards funding and placing and opening up a 4th sector. We're moving one of our stations right now that's coming out kind of the Gainesway area and going over off of in the Veterans Park area. And our whole burgeoning area, the part that more people will see about Lexington is the whole Hamburg area. We need to look at that as an area because people are waiting too long to have police get to them. We have to work on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Farr, you will take this question first. Meaningful public participation is vital to a responsive local government. What are important and innovative approaches that you would advocate for to make government processes more accessible, equitable, and transparent?
Thank you for that question. I think government officials ought to be more accessible. One of the things that I've been planning to do, and actually I've done some of it, is doing, as I run, an accountability and accessibility tour, right? Where I go out there to the people, to restaurants, bars, coffee shops, to have conversations and find out what's on their mind, right? What kind of problems are they facing? What are they struggling with? How might city government help? That's something I've done as part of the campaign. I'll continue to do if elected as a city councilman at large. I think those kinds of conversations around the table with citizens where they are in their locations is very important in order to get them to add their voice to city government.
Thank you. Mr. Moloney.
Yes, being a district councilman for 7 years, one of the assets that I had was starting a neighborhood association. And when I left, every area in my district had neighborhoods. And when I started, there was only 2. And I think when I finished, there was about 15. That's very important as a council member, that you get out and show what tools we have, the city has. And I have an open door policy. All the city employees come to me, I see them, and that's the same way with the public. I have an open door policy, and I work with other council members when they ask me to go to their neighborhood association meetings. I've been to a lot of them, and I've been able to help them. Some examples that I did in the 11th district to help them in their neighborhoods. So it really, when you take this job, you got to be able to use the balance and be very creative and listen to your council members that need help and be open and have an open door policy.
Thank you. Mr. Farmer.
Oh, the blessing and curse of Zoom. I would love if we were downtown in the William Stamps Farish Theater inside the library having this meeting. And certainly having served during the time of COVID, our council meetings via Zoom just seemed, the word remote doesn't seem to cover it. I'm glad that the government center is open again. I'm glad our meetings are open again. There was a time where we took council meetings to the 1 or 2 places we could in town based on the technology at the time. We went once to the theater at UK and once to the library, I think, one of the libraries, to have a council meeting. The ability for us now to do that more openly, I think, is a great opportunity, because I think the technology is there for us to have a setup or a partial setup, depending on what the technology is. But there's a certain setback when people, they don't necessarily want to come in the government center. They don't really want to be on TV or come up under the lights. We need to be able to take the meetings to them wherever possible, because people want to be able to have influence and talk to you. I happen to be in retail. People can find me. That's a great thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ellinger.
One of the problems of many with the pandemic was how we were so isolated and didn't get to interact. And as was mentioned, when we had to go to Zoom, it was completely different. And at some point, we had to actually stop our public comment during our meetings, which makes it very hard not to be able to have people come and speak about issues that are very important to them. I'm glad to see that we are back open at the chambers. I, as stated earlier, I prefer not to be on Zoom right now and back down at the theater speaking in front of a crowd, but we have to adapt. And the big thing is neighborhoods, and we have to make sure that they are our heartbeat of the city, and that we are out there. And I try to go to all the neighborhoods association meetings I can that invite me, because I think it's important. You don't want to be behind a desk, you want to be out in the community. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Moloney, you'll take this question first. Do you have any suggestions to improve LexTrans specifically and multimodal transportation in general?
Yes, I have the opportunity for many years to serve on the MPO Metropolitan for roads. The LECTRAN is an important part to us in this community, especially with gas as high as it is now and inflation as bad as it is. I think we've got to be more creative in how we get people on the LECTRAN. We got to start working with our regional Nicholsville to be able to use LECTRAN into those. The rail that everybody's talking about, I support it. The question is how you're going to pay for it. But those are a lot of unanswered, but we do have a tool right now, the LECTRAN, that we can use to partnership with our other counties. As gas continues to go higher and this economy keeps going, this is, if there's ever a more important time right now for this service, is now for LECTRAN. And as a council member, I would support and hear their ideas and do whatever we have to do to get it done.
Thank you. Mr. Farmer.
You know, the partnership between the city and LECTRAN is so very important. And they kind of following up on Councilmember Moloney's comment earlier, they've done a great job of diversifying their fleet into other styles of fueling. And in so doing, spread those costs out so they can get more done, in my estimation. We need to continue to help them do that. But then you ask about multimodal things, because, you know, every year we continue to stripe and add more bike lanes wherever we can, and all the opportunities that we can do so. And you see streets, you know, I was going to say randomly, but certainly one at a time being restriped, so there's more room for more types of folks there. You know, you've got to have a sidewalk that's safe, then you got to have a street space that's safe, but you have room for bicycles in there too. And we continue to have some challenges with that across the city, but it's something that this and previous councils have worked on and need to continue to work on. But we need to continue to have our best relationship with LECTRAN, because they're going to be more important going forward, because more people are going to use them consistently than ever before. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ellinger.
As I had mentioned earlier, the importance of LECTRAN and multimodal. I'm a little selfish because I am a cyclist, so I am always out trying to promote more bike lanes and more trails, because I'm going to be using them myself too. So I'm always out there. I chair the curb management, so we're looking at downtown and how we're going to look at what goes from the curb out and make that more multimodal. I serve on the MPO and work with Jessamine County on that, and it is part of regionalism too. So with, as it was mentioned, gas prices up, inflation up, we need to make sure that everybody has an opportunity, because LECTRAN helps with jobs. That is part of the economy. It gets people to work, and we have to make sure that we have access for everybody and convenience so they can get to work. And I would love to do something for rail, but it becomes cost prohibitive. But it would be nice if we could come up with something. And living on Nicholsville Road, I would like to see something when it comes out to Imagine Lexington.
Thank you so much. Mr. Farr.
Yes, I think we may need to invest a bit more in LECTRAN. I'll answer this question on the basis of complaints I've heard from some of the citizens of Lexington. One big problem is the accessibility of bus stops. I've heard this from members of the elderly community who've had difficulty getting to bus stops. And I've heard this from people in certain communities that the stops weren't as accessible as they should be. So I think we need to sort of take a look at the city and figure out how to perhaps have more bus stops, make them more accessible, and invest in more buses also. I think LECTRAN is a big part of the economy in terms of getting people to work. And a lot of those people are still having to struggle to get to work.
Thank you. Mr. Farmer, you'll take this question first. What are your thoughts on having a robust trauma-informed juvenile justice system in Lexington and Kentucky that will be applied to all young people regardless of race, gender, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, or offense?
Did you say trauma?
Trauma-informed.
Give it to me again.
What are the thoughts on having a robust trauma-informed juvenile justice system reform in Lexington and Kentucky that will be applied to all young people, regardless of race, gender, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, or offense?
Well, first, I'd like to sit down with the person that wrote this question and spend some time with them. I guess trauma-informed must allude to what has happened or what has gone on and how to deal with that outcome. And you would do that across all socioeconomic values and places. I think that if you understand what the trauma was and can then work on the root causes of it, no matter what it is or where it is, you're better off. I would think that there are ways within the government, either through the council, through the administration, or through the Citizens Advocate Office, to have information flow, and in certain ways, in certain times, to help those without others' knowledge or who need help with in certain ways. That information is important, that it is to them and not to others around them. We can continue to do more of that. I need to spend more time with someone about the trauma-informed part of this. Very interesting question. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ellinger.
Like Mr. Farmer, I'm not quite sure exactly what the question is, but I will try to attempt. As an attorney, I do work with the law system, and I guess we need to, as it was suggested, is meet with the individual and try to understand what they're kind of asking, because we certainly want everybody to be treated equally with a social and economic, and we want to make sure that all juveniles have a fair shake. And I guess it has to go with making sure that, as mentioned earlier, that the education, we have the root causes of why they're in this situation and try to address that from the drugs, from the education. Thank you. Mr.
Farr.
This is a very important topic, and I completely support robust trauma-informed justice system. So a lot of the problems we talked about already, from drug use to crime and violence, are the result of children growing into adults that have trauma that's never been properly addressed, right? Whether the trauma is physical or psychological or emotional. Many children in our society suffer from various forms of trauma that is never properly addressed, and they act out on those traumas, and then they're criminalized, right? And I think this solution will also have a great impact on the crime rate and violence in the city if we can sort of take our children early on and get them proper treatment, proper care for traumas that they've experienced at some point in their life. So I'm very much in support of this.
Thank you so much, Mr. Moloney.
For many years, when these children went to court, no one knew anything about them, and they put these kids in a bad situation, and the court didn't have enough tools to help them. This is a way we got to get back on track. I support this, and they should have been doing it many years ago. So yes, and yes.
Thank you so much. This will be the last question before closing comments. And Mr. Ellinger, would you support the expansion of the urban services boundary if it was done very carefully so as not to harm the agricultural part of Fayette County? And if you could be assured that housing built would be mixed, small and large, expensive and inexpensive, single family and multifamily? And please explain your answer.
Well, Lexington's unique because in 1958, we had the urban service area. And every 5 years, we look at the comprehensive plan. And right now, we're actually doing a on the table that's going to happen next week from the 10th through the 16th. And with that, it's going to get input. And the role of the council is the goal and objectives. Now, back in 2019, 18, 19, we came up with, one of the goals was the Sustainable Growth Committee that looked at triggers on how we're going to grow. At this point, we really have only done one quarter of it, in my opinion, because we have only looked at what's inside the urban service area. We need to also look outside and look at objective standards right now and how, when, where we're going to grow. And I think when we have that from the committee that brings it back, it will give us the information we need to know if we should be growing or not. But as mentioned earlier, we only have 150 houses right now that are able to be sold. So this is a huge, big topic, and I see the stop button, so I will stop. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Farr.
Yeah, so a couple of things. One is, as of 2021, there are like 5,000 acres within the boundary that is there to be used, that hasn't been used. And I think we ought to begin exploring those properties first. And the second thing is, when that boundary was established in 1958, the population of Lexington was 60,000. Today, that population is near 350,000. That's incredible growth. And as I said before, by the year 2025, we have a projected 40,000 more citizens in the city. And at that kind of rate, that kind of growth rate, I think is inevitable that at some point we're going to have to rethink the boundaries. Right now, I think 70% of Lexington lies outside of that boundary, right? So that's a lot of property. And I think we're going to have a serious, hard conversation about that as our population continues to grow at the rate that it's growing.
Thank you. Mr. Moloney.
Thank you. I support building on the interstate, and I give you an example. As you are building that new Central Baptist Hospital, and we've been regional planning. Lexington needs to be where our heart and soul is, and that's Eastern Kentucky. And anybody coming off that Mountain Parkway is either going to be going to that hospital. And I promise you, University of Kentucky is not going to let Central Baptist be the first hospital to be seen off that Mountain Parkway. So that is the development that will be going at the interstate. And during this pandemic, you can see up in New York where people are driving on a train for 3-4 hours. They don't want to go through that lifestyle. Great living down here. Can you imagine putting a factory right there on that interstate and have people work there? And if they want to drive 20 miles, 30 miles to work and not have to hit no lights, that's where we can build houses outside. Interstate, very important to this community.
Thank you. Mr. Farmer.
First, I want to say the last question, I think, was written by two of my co-hosts today. Two of you already in that question. That was really good. Thank you. On the boundary, the urban service boundary, the whole understanding of how Lexington is as it relates to the county is one of the best planning things that was ever done here or anywhere. And the boundary is a tool. It isn't a wall. And I think that there's a lot of interest around this. There's always going to be. But some of the best conversations about this have been in the council chambers during a comprehensive plan update, which those are the kind of conversations in front of the microphone and on TV where you get to see who needs a place to live, who has a place to live, and what can we do to get more in between there? Because there are other ways to incent some of those 5,000 acres other than adding other acres to it. But I think you have to have a complete discussion and understanding about where you are and see where it's best to get to. A lot of times the comprehensive plan update didn't add a lot of acreage. It made some changes. We haven't done that recently. We need to look at it. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, all of you, for such engaging answers today. We will now turn towards our closing remarks, and we have yet again used random.org for the order of go. So Mr. Farmer, you are first up for closing remarks.
Well, thank you for providing us. I agree, kind of our first outing today. I appreciate being in front of the voters of Fayette County again, only this time in front of the entire county, asking for your vote on May 17th. 6 of us advanced to the fall after this, having served 20 years on the council, knowing the ability to make things happen in Lexington and understanding the importance of getting back to those basics so that folks can have the safe street to walk on, the safe road to drive on, and the safe neighborhood to live in. I ask for the opportunity via your vote and your advocacy on my behalf, because Lexington needs to continue to make great informed decisions, but have new ideas come to the fore. Those have happened really literally on this call. But for now, it's important to understand Bill Farmer, support your local farmer at large. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Mr. Moloney.
Thank you. And again, I commend you, the league, for asking such good questions. I'm running back because I have a couple big projects that I want to fulfill. One, the opioid problem that we have. I want to be sure we spend it wisely. The second is for climate change. I think the garbage pickup is going to be very important in the next 3 years. Another main thing that I am, as you know, I did affordable housing for many years. I taught people how to do their budget. I'm worried about what direction we're going the next 2 years. We are in a crisis. I know the federal government is giving us a lot of money. It makes us look real good. But before the budget, before the pandemic, we were $20 million shortfall. And if we keep spending the way we are, we could be 50 to 60 million when we come out of this storm. I want to make sure we spend the dollar wisely, and I ask for your vote to keep those promises going. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Farr.
Thank you. Now, Lexington is a wonderful place to live. It's been very good to me. It's been a great place for me to raise my children, and I love living here. But at the end of the day, it's not just about me. It's about all citizens of this city. And things aren't going well for a lot of members of our community. A lot of them are suffering from lack of resources. We've talked about poverty. We've talked about many of our fellow citizens do not have the resources that they need for self-development and self-determination. And my goal is to make sure that their voices are at the table when decisions are made that impact their lives. We all rise when we pour from the bottom up. And my goal is to make sure Lexington is big enough for everybody. And I want to make sure that everybody has a voice at the table. So if you want to make sure that your voice is at the table when decisions are made, vote May 17th for Arnold Farr, City Council at large. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Ellinger.
Well, thank you. I get to wrap it up. I want to thank the league. I want to thank the candidates who are running, because everybody did a nice job and they were good questions, and it was very well run. So thank you for doing that. I'm Chuck Ellinger. I'm running for re-election. This is my 4th term as an at-large member. I'm an attorney. I was a small business owner. I owned Rogers Restaurant. I know how to make a payroll. I've talked about what I go back to the basic services for all residents. That's what I talk about. My main 3 priorities are public safety. If you don't feel safe in your house, you don't feel safe in your street, we're not doing our #1 job. Economic development and jobs. We have to provide that for everybody, and affordable housing. I really appreciate this opportunity to be here. You can actually go to my QR code right there, put your phone up here, and you can go right to my website, chuckellinger.com. And just like that Super Bowl ad, just go right there and you can put that phone on there right now and you can find out all about me. I appreciate your vote on May 17th. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thanks to all the candidates today for such an engaging conversation. These forums will be available on the league website, which is lwvlexington.com. Just click on candidate forums. And while you're there, we would love to have you check out league membership. Everyone is welcome, male and female. Please be sure to vote on May 17th. And you can look for additional information on the candidates at vote411.org. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.